Welcome to Dead Kid Book Reviews. I'm Judith, and today I'm bringing you a review of The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. I promised it in my 5-star reads video, and so here it is. Every time I read a book and I give it 5 stars, I feel like I ought to give it a dedicated review, even though it's sometimes more fun to film the very negative reviews, as it's easier to make those amusing. But most of the time I end up forgetting to film, or not scripting it, or not bothering, and then by the time I get around to thinking, oh yeah, I probably should film a review of that, it's been way too long. Either the book isn't relevant to anyone anymore, or I've completely forgotten everything that happened. Not so in this case. Okay, yes, it's been a couple of weeks since I read it, but in my defense, I had to wait for my physical copy to get here in the post so I could waft that at you. You get it. You get it. So this is the book, this is the ARC copy. I'm not going to hold it because I think it would make you seasick to have me waft it around, and also obviously this isn't the final cover, so I will put that on screen for you now. Ooh! This book is written by Chinese-American author Andrea Stewart. I'd not heard much about her before, I'd not encountered her before, so I decided to look her up on Goodreads, and essentially she's written this, contributed to a few anthologies, and also I think an indie published series called, let me check my notes, called The Changeling Wars, which is urban fantasy, so I haven't encountered it because that's not really what I read. So I'd not read anything from her before, wasn't sure what to expect, and will probably now go and seek out some of her stuff in maybe some of the anthologies she's contributed to. What's the book about? So the blow of this book is a little misleading. It mentions the daughter of an emperor called Lin, as in she is called Lin, not the emperor is called Lin. Language is hard. And the fact that she has to kind of use bone magic to prove herself to her father. It also mentions a revolution and that Lin's going to have to make a choice between her father and her people. Essentially what I'm saying is it makes it sound like Lin is the only point of view character in this book. She isn't. I know. Thrilling. Don't get me wrong, Lin is a great character and I actually really love her story in the book, but I didn't want to wash over all the other amazing side characters. We have rebels, we have queer characters, we have smugglers, we have mysterious characters who I won't go into too much detail about because it would ruin it for you. What I'm saying is there's more to this book than just my dad is a bad man, I better learn some magic, which is almost a YA plotline, which is interesting. But the fact that that part of the book that could have been really meh was also amazing really sold this book for me. I've made a list of things I liked because numbered lists are good. Number 1, the perspectives. I've mentioned Lin's perspective already, but I'll reiterate that it was very, very strong. I loved Lin's storyline partly because she had the most to do with the magic, which I will come on to in a moment. But also, she's a really emotional character and emotionally strong, and on top of that you get magical spying, which is great. Her father's horrible to her, let's not get that wrong, but it's written in such a way that it doesn't feel voyeuristic, which can happen in books with that kind of power imbalance. What about the other perspectives? I don't want to get too into these because I think it will give away some of the plot elements, but I'll give you a smattering of information. We have Jovis, who is a smuggler, an unlikely hero, and he has a magical animal companion, and basically that's everything I want in the world. I'm going to mispronounce this, but Falwe and Romani, who are women who love women within the story, but they also talk about privilege and the dismantling of said privilege and understanding your own privilege, and yes, it's also a lesbian relationship that's just sort of fine within the setting. I'll come on to that later. And sand. And I don't want to talk too much about sand. I'll just let you find that out for yourself. Thing I liked, number 2, the setting. This series is called The Drowning Empire, and while my copy of the book did not have a map, I don't know if the finished copy is going to, I've imagined it as a chain of islands, and these islands are floating, and sometimes they sink. And the general terror of that is really profoundly wonderful throughout the book, but combined with the terror of this government that's not that great, empire and it's just a really cool setting. A lot of the travel scenes in this book happen by boat. If you know me, you know I love boat things. I'm really looking forward to getting more of the meat of the setting in later books, because obviously much of this book is Lin's perspective and she's in the palace the whole time, pretty much. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of the different aspects of this society and world. I've already mentioned it, but this is a world where same-sex relationships are something unremarkable, and I'm sure other authors have done this before, but this is the first book where I've really noticed it and I appreciated it. So yeah, just generally really great. I think the strongest thing of the setting is the kind of silent, constant threat and the way that power is sort of a lingering undercurrent within the story. Thing I like, number 3, the magic. If there's one thing I keep coming back to when I think about this book, it's the magic. It's bone magic, which plenty of people have done, but I've never seen it done this way. Essentially, everyone in the Empire has to give up a shard of bone, which is horrifying. And even more horrifyingly, that shard of bone is then taken to the Emperor and the bone magic. I think the Emperor's the only one who can do it, and his family. Anyway, these bone shards are used in constructs, and a construct is basically a hodgepodge of animal parts smushed together, and then you put the bone shards in them, and on the bone shards you write the kind of instructions, you put it in the thing, you do the bone magic, and the thing comes to life and follows the instructions inside it. And the instructions are basically like logic if statements, so like, if I do this thing, then you do this thing, and it works its way through, and it's just really, really clever. So you can have a really simple construct that would be like a squirrel that would bring me cake when I asked for it. So if Judith asks for cake, bring cake. Great. But then you have much more complex constructs that are dealing with like put together bone magic, and what I really liked about this was it's a hard magic system, but there's loads of room for experimentation within it, which I think is really cool. It's like a flexible hard magic system. That doesn't work, but you know what I mean. This magic though is quite dark and quite scary and has quite difficult implications for the people whose bone shards are being used, and I'm interested to see how that will work in later books when it's no longer a good thing to use bone magic, so how are you going to keep that really interesting part of your book alive? But I am adding this book to my list of books with really interesting magic systems, which at some point I will actually film the video for. I think that would be really cool. I love a hard magic system. Love it, love it, love it. Is there anything I would have changed about this book? At this point, I can't say there is. There is a lot I'm hoping for in the sequel, which I don't know when that's coming out. I don't think there's even a title for it yet. I'd love to see more of this world. I'd love to understand more about how this floating, drowning empire functions. And I think there's also going to be a huge amount of fallout from how the first book ends. No spoilers though. I'm really excited for the sequel, and if the sequel isn't good, I think it will have ramifications on this book, because there's a lot of things that aren't discussed that if they then are just left as loose plot threads, what was the point? Overall, I really, really enjoyed this book. It's long enough that it gets into the meat of things. It's short enough that it doesn't drag. I think it's going to make a great addition to your bookshelf come September. I know, that's a long way away, and I'm making this video way in advance. But as I say, I wanted to make this review while everything was still fresh, and even then I've still been a bit waffly, so I apologise. This gives you time to watch this review pre-order, forget that you pre-ordered, and then it's like you bought yourself a present from the past. What could be better? Thank you for watching me wax lyrical about this book. Hopefully now I can move on and not wish that every single book I was reading was just still The Bone Shard Daughter. Why is every book not bone magic? In fact, stick recommendations for bone magic and or hard magic systems in the comments below, because one day I want to film that video and I want to get all of the good books in there. You can also subscribe, it makes me feel loved and appreciated, and also lets me know that you enjoyed my review videos. Thank you. And I will see you in the next one. Why did I make that noise?